Welcome to the bar, come on and pull up a seat and open up your Bible, what a wonderful feast. The living bread, and we're discussing what it means for the streets, the inner cities and the burbs, and every person we meet. This is where we challenge worldviews that we hear from world news. In light of the scripture, we are here to serve you. We're your source for resources to help you on your way as you battle mean forces. This is for the people who can see the importance of sound theology and the scripture that support it. And this is for the truth lovers, biblically reforming, preaching Christ to the nations. Yeah, welcome to the modern Reformation. Yeah,
the bar, biblical and reformed. Welcome everybody to the bar. It's your boy Dwayne in the building, right back in here another Tuesday. Super excited as always, be coming through your speakers, through your earbuds, wherever you listen to the bar. We're grateful that you're listening. And I love to start the show the same way, man, by thanking the listeners. Thank you guys for listening to the bar, tuning into the bar, telling your friends and family about the bar. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. And like I do every week, I'll bring in awesome guests. This brother actually has been on here before, but you hadn't heard the episode. But I know he was going to let me keep that a secret, but y'all know how transparent I am. I don't mind showing my flaws and my shortcomings. But I have on none other than my brother, Paul, man. How you doing?
Dwayne, it's great to be back with you again, man. Little does our audience know that I was with you a year ago. So spill the beans, man. Spill the beans.
Yeah. Listen, Paul, I promise, like, I literally like thought that this episode got published. Like, I remember here, let me tell you how far in my head, I remember looking up the Compelled logo. I remember doing that. Like, so it's partially somewhere. Like, I remember that step because I remember looking that up and I was like, okay, I'm gonna use their logo because it's green and I was there, bro. Like, I don't understand where we missed it, but nevertheless, God is sovereign and everything is for a purpose. Everything is for a reason. And maybe they weren't supposed to hear you last year. They're supposed to hear you this year. Who knows?
It's true, man. It's true. God may have just reached down and zapped that audio file and like hit delete on your computer while you're gone. Or, I was thinking like maybe it's Jeff Bezos or the deep state. Maybe they're like, oh, this is such a good interview. Can't let Christians hear this one now.
Right. Yeah.
So we got to repeat it. Or Bezos. Exactly.
Oh, I love it, bro. Well, listen, man. For those that don't know who you are, man, introduce yourself. Tell a little bit about what you got going on, man, and we'll deep dive into that right after.
Thanks, Dwayne. So I am Paul Hastings. I am the producer and creator of the Compelled podcast. And our show is we take really amazing stories from people around the globe who have been transformed by Jesus Christ. And we take their stories, we let them tell their story, but then we edit it down into a condensed followable story. We add sound effects and music and narration, and we really bring those stories out to life. And I'll share with your audience a couple examples as we get through the interview here. Awesome.
Yeah, bro. I've listened to a couple of them, man, and it's almost like kind of like an audio documentary kind of thing. You feel the vibe and you kind of paint the picture and with the audio. I love that, man. Like, that's something that I've always been fond of, being able to create that, and to see somebody do it on the Christian side is always amazing, man. So let's give us some genesis, man. Tell us what got you to the point to actually do that podcast. Like, what led you to that?
Yeah, great question. So in 2018, so this is 5 years ago, I was newly married. I think I'd been married for 2 years, and my wife and I, we had our first child, and I had a job working in the political sector in Texas. I was just doing politics, and I was really burned out by it. I've been doing that for about 10 years. And so my wife and I began praying and asking God, like, hey, what are other things that, that I might be gifted with? What are other things that maybe I could do that are not politics anymore? And through a variety of circumstances, my wife and I realized one day, we just looked up and we're like, oh my goodness, we just have a lot of friends of ours, like personal friends of ours that have these really crazy stories of what God has done and how he's transformed their life. And here's a couple examples I'll give you. One of them, this is a lady that I just knew growing up from my high school years. And she was this older lady, and she used to be an abortion clinic owner. She owned 3 clinics in the Dallas area back just after Roe versus Wade, actually, so back in the 1970s. And she owned 3 clinics. and she was responsible for profiting off of 30,000 abortions.
Wow.
And the whole time she was doing that, she thought of herself as a Bible believing Christian.
Wow.
She went to church faithfully. She tithed 10% of every dollar she made on her abortions. She kept a Bible at her clinic, and every morning she'd wake up and pray to God, say, "Dear Jesus, please don't let any women die in my clinics today." I mean, this is crazy, right? So messed up. And so finally, and I'm not going to tell you the whole story, how it happened, because your listeners got to tune into her story. Her name is Carol Everett, episode number 3. But finally, God got a hold of her through a crazy circumstance, and now has completely flipped the script. Carol's now in her 70s, and she is fighting against abortion every day, every waking moment. She's been doing that now for the last 20 years. And if you talk to her, you would have no clue that's who she is. You would have no idea. She's just this random lady who lives in Texas, man. And it was just a friend of ours that we had. I was like, wow, someone needs to share her story. This is crazy. And so that's how we ended up making the podcast, but just finding friends of ours that had amazing stories that no one had heard, or maybe some people had heard, but like we just wanted to retell it again. So that's how we got started doing the show.
I love it, man. I love it. And that, you know, I guess it's somewhat similar on my side. You know, people always asking me about the network that I created. But most of the network were friends that I had, you know, that you know, had gifts and talents. And, you know, I was like, hey, you know, we can't all be on one podcast. Let's create separate, you know, one. So that's super cool, man. Just to talk about that. So, that's an amazing story. And I remember you telling me about that the first time. What is another one that kind of stands out? Kind of a teaser. We're giving all the teasers here, man, so we can get people listening and subscribe.
Yeah, that's a good one, man. And actually, I guess no one can really see what I'm holding up here, but I make these little episode cards to help me remember some of our stories, actually. And so this is my friend Yusuf Agoro. He lives here in Austin. And I don't think I had done his story yet when I did the interview with you last year. So this is a new one. Should be a new
exclusive.
one. Exclusive. That's right, man. And so Yusuf's a young guy. He's my age. He's like 33. He lives in Austin. But so he grew up, and he was his family were devout Muslims in Houston, Texas. So, you know, they weren't like, like into, extremism and violence and war. Like that wasn't their thing. They were just kind of like that, as you would think, like a nominal Christian family in America. Well, they were sort of a more than nominal Muslim family in America, but that, they were pretty devout. Right. And so like, so he would go to the mosque, every single week, and he would do his prayers, wash 5 times a day, pray 5 times a day. He would, had plans to make a journey, a pilgrimage, all these different things. And it was really interesting. It was a friend of his, a skateboard friend of his, who became a Christian and started sharing the gospel with him. And it was like through a really deep friendship that they had over many years. And they would have debates and discussions and things like that. And Yusuf, like, he would always get hung up on the idea that, like, but why did Jesus have to die? I don't get that, right? Like, and he understood all this stuff. And his friend, the skateboard friend, was really trying to get into apologetics. And they're just teenagers, And so finally, his skateboard friend tricks him one day and is like, "Hey, man, I've got this movie we're going to watch. It's called The Passion. You want to come watch it?" "Oh, sure. Cool, man." And so Yusuf has absolutely no idea what this movie is, right? So they watch The Passion of the Christ. It's rated R for extreme gore and violence, right? And so like Yusuf's just kind of like, this is disturbing. This is really gross. And he was just kind of basically turned off by it. And at that moment, he just decided, okay, I've watched this whole movie about why Jesus had to die. I've seen it depicted. It doesn't resonate with me. I just don't think this is real. It's not for me. And at that point, he just completely wrote Christianity off.
Wow.
2 years passed. And of course, his skateboard friend is just like really sad. Like, oh man, like I pulled all the stops and Yusuf doesn't believe, whatever. So his friend goes on to Bible college. Yusuf is now a senior in high school. And one night, this is like 2 years later. One night he's at his home. It's like 1 a.m. in the morning. He logs off of Facebook, and he's just walking through his house, like with his parents, everyone's asleep. He's walking back to his room in his house. And suddenly, as he's in the hallway, he has this weird experience. Like it's pitch black, but he sort of thinks like it's weird. It's like, did God just say something? And it's like, what? And it's really weird. It's what? And it's not like this audible voice of God, but like suddenly out of nowhere, 2 years ago, suddenly all this stuff just flashes back through his brain about the movie and about his family and it's almost as though it's like he feels as though God is saying, like, I would have died for your family in the death that you saw in that movie, but would you die for them? And it's this moment where he's like, whoa, well, no, I don't think I would. And it's just, and that is the genesis of this little journey of where he then begins exploring Christianity behind his family's back. Wow. And eventually does become a Christian, but then keeps it a secret from his family. And I'm not going to tell you the rest. Okay.
Right.
That's the teaser right there. Again, just a great story. Young guy, young dude. Yeah. And just his journey of faith. And it's not this crazy, like, oh, he had a vision or whatever, but it's just like, God using a movie. And it just kind of flashed through his brain like 2 years later. It was really cool, man.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. See, that's really cool, man. And I really think my listeners are going to enjoy hearing these amazing stories, man. So I think you mentioned that you do it kind of by seasons. Yep. So what season are we in? What do you have already recorded, and what are some of the things you're working towards?
Great question. So, hey, and just to be upfront with everybody, I am just like you, Dwayne. Like, I don't work on this full time. I have a full-time job that I do, like behind the scenes. Like, I'm a business, consultant, and I'm working with companies that like cut lawns and, mow the grass. One of my clients I work with is like a big window washing company. I mean, so like, I'm normally not even focused on the podcast. Like most of the year, I'm working on stuff that's like totally not related to testimonies of Christianity at all. Just straight corporate America. Right. But, this is a passion of mine, and so like normally what happens is like I try to go find these stories. And when I find a great story, I'll put it on my spreadsheet. And then I'll just like hope like someday I'll travel through that person's area where they live. Because all of our interviews we record in person. Nice. So normally when I'm going to go on a family vacation where I'm going to travel for work, I'm pulling up that spreadsheet to say, hey, who lives in the area that's on my spreadsheet? Because maybe I'll try to record them. So this last year, I actually ended up doing a lot of travel for work. We ended up going through Florida and Colorado and Illinois, and that was just for work. But I did a lot of interviews while I was on the road. And so I've got a whole bunch of really cool interviews coming up. One of them that I will just give you a really quick preview on. And it's this guy named Greg Steer, grew up on the streets of Denver in the really bad part. I think it was the south side of town. And his uncles were all bodybuilding mafia wannabes. So they weren't in the mob, but they basically could have been. So they were extremely violent. Like the police all knew them by name. They were constantly in trouble. And these were his uncles that he regarded as like, Marvel superheroes because they were so insanely strong. It was like a genetic trait that they had. And all of these uncles, just incredibly violent men, did really terrible things to Greg and to other people as well. But it was like this really twisted family dynamic also where like they're loyal to the just like in the mob, right? Right. And so anyways, one of his uncles becomes a Christian. And it just blows everyone else in the family away. Like, what? Like so-and-so's now a religious freak. And this guy was a religious freak. Like, so he was a bodybuilding thug, now a Christian. And so he would go to like the sauna and try to like, he'd be like, building on weight, and he'd be trying to witness to other guys in the sauna, and he'd be cussing at them because they wouldn't believe in Jesus. And so he'd be cussing at them and threatening to, knock their block off if they didn't pay attention to what he had to say. Because these guys are just really raw and everything. Anyway, that's the world that Greg grew up in. And so he tells his story, like growing up in this mob boss family that's now turned into Christians. And his own experiences. And today, Greg's an evangelist. And so he travels around the country sharing the gospel of Jesus with teenagers that are, obviously very impressionable. Yeah, just a really cool story that he's got. And then one other story. I told you I'd tell you only one story. I'll tell you one more story. One more story that's coming up in this season. And this one's really cool. And this might be the season finale. So like this is a preview no one else is going to hear about. It's this lady named Barbara. And Barbara was in the military. I don't know which position she had. She was like a private or something. Anyway, she ended up having an affair with her commanding officer. And she was like totally, like she was totally fine with it. Like it didn't bother her conscience at all. And she actually got her commanding officer to abandon his wife and divorce his wife and marry her. Like he did.
Wow.
I mean, it was like super crazy, right? Well, so like life goes on. She's happy, whatever. 7 years pass by. And then she has her first child. And when she has her first child, she suddenly becomes very like, I don't know, it's hormones or whatever, but becomes really worried about the childhood that her child is going to have. She's worried about, like, is her son going to have the same childhood that she had growing up, because she had a super messed up childhood and everything. And it ends up being that, like, her marriage starts falling apart, and she's questioning, like, because this marriage started from an affair, like, are we doomed? Da, 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 da. All this stuff's going on. And eventually she ends up listening to a podcast episode.
Nice.
Not my show, not your episode, someone else's show. She ends up listening to a Christian podcast, just stumbles across it, man. A Christian podcast episode, and they have someone else sharing about how their marriage was falling apart and how God saved them.
Wow.
And after listening to this episode, she's like, she just turns and just kind of like, she's not even sure if God's even real in the first place. And so she says, well, God, if you're real, I think I can make it about another year before, like, maybe I'm going to commit suicide. Like, mentally, she's like messing up and stuff. And she's like, I think I can make it another year. So I'll give you a year to see if you can, like, show that you're real and, like, save my marriage. And it's just kind of like this weird thing. And sure enough, man, over the course of a year, some crazy stuff happens. And some of the things are crazy, and some of the things are small things, just small things, like, and I won't give you it away, but it was just a really powerful story. And God does show up in really beautiful, amazing ways. And it's just this really beautiful story. And again, this is a lady, she's never recorded her story in audio ever before. It's been written down, but it's never been put on tape, like an audio form before. And this is the very first time. So I'm really excited that we get to share that story.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, that's super exciting, bro. Sound like some amazing content is on the way. We definitely are going to put your information in the show notes so people can subscribe and check out what's coming and what you already have, man. I love the concept. I love everything about it, to be honest, man. So right here, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
You could save big when you bundle your home and auto with Progressive, but when we just come out and say it, it feels like it falls a bit flat. So we're going to use humor. But we don't want to insult your intelligence, so nothing too goofy. And we need to avoid any polarizing topics. Oh, and it has to be about how you can save big when you bundle your home and auto with Progressive. You know what? Maybe humor is a bad idea. Yeah, it's never going to work. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Discount not available in all states or situations.
Welcome to the Smiling at the Future podcast. My name is Christy Rose, and this is my pursuit to glean practical wisdom on femininity, homemaking, finances, relationships, and singleness from the God-fearing men and women in my life. Hope you enjoy this journey with me as we learn to smile at the future.
All right, we're back in here with my man Paul. Paul, this is the side of the show we call the bar signature question. These are 3 questions I ask all of my guests. So the first signature bar question is, what kind of music do you listen to?
Oh man, I like to listen to all kinds of music. But to give y'all a flavor, so I might be listening to like cinematic score music. There's a artist, his name is Thomas Bergerson, and he's got a new album that just came out, and he makes like cinema score. It's just really beautiful stuff. Big orchestras and all kinds of stuff. So I like that. I also like a lot of listening to dubstep. Normally, so if you notice, most of the music I listen to doesn't have words, because somehow I can't concentrate when there's like someone singing in the background and I'm trying to like think and stuff. So I listen to that stuff too. And then I like listening to just like other probably film scores, I guess. That's probably the main answer there.
Yeah. That's why I like lo-fi. Lo-fi is that's my favorite, because it has a hip hop, jazzy, little groove to it. So I've become a huge fan of lo-fi. So good deal, man. All right, next signature bar question is, what book or books are you currently reading?
Oh, dude, I just started a book yesterday called The Hype Handbook by Michael Shine. He's not a Christian. I think he's Jewish, but it's all about marketing. And basically he looks at like terrible figures throughout history, like cult leaders and Adolf Hitler and con men and P.T. Barnum, all these people through history, a lot of them are unsavory. But for whatever reason, they were able to make a huge dent and convince a lot of people to believe whatever they had. And so he takes he takes a look at all their things and tries to condense it down. Like, what is it about these guys? Like, what are the strategies that they're using to build hype around, their product or religion or whatever it might be?
I like it. I might have to get that one. I like that.
Yeah.
Just the whole idea of looking at that. So, all right. Last signature bar question is, what podcasts or sermons do you listen to, if any?
Yeah, great question. I do listen to Ask Pastor John. My wife listens to him more. So normally she sends me the highlights and I'll listen to the ones that she's already pre-selected. So very selective there. And then normally with podcasts, I'm sampling all the time. Like, I guess as a podcast, I'm really interested in hearing what other people are creating. So normally I subscribe to a bunch of shows, but never have the time to finish anything. Nope. But I've currently got like 300 hours of audio queued up in my phone that I'm supposed to listen to at some point. So it just keeps growing and growing. So I do like listening to a lot of audio drama in podcast form. And then a lot of history shows also. Yeah.
Love it. Good deal, man. Yeah, I have that same issue with podcasts and books. They just keep growing and growing. And I figure one day when I'm old, I'll sit down and listen to all the shows and read all the books.
That's right, man. Hey, let me flip the script on you and ask you, what are you listening to right now, and what are you reading?
Oh man, so like I mentioned, lo-fi, usually lo-fi hip hop. When I work out, definitely gangster rap. Because I like to, my running joke is when I live hard, I want people cussing at me. So
there you go, man. There you go.
What I'm reading, man, I don't know right now. I actually, I guess I'm in between books. I got to figure out what the next one is going to be.
Nice.
I actually had someone send me one that was really interesting. About just Christian life in the digital world. Actually, it's right here. Let me grab it. Oh, Digital Domain by Jeff Mengi. So yeah, I am. I actually just interviewed him, and he sent me that in the mail. So I'm excited to dive in that to see what that's about, because I'm definitely a slave to my device.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. Yeah. I've heard it. I haven't read it though. So.
Yeah. That's it's on my desk, so it's gonna be next in line.
Nice, awesome, brother.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on, Paul, man. But it's always a pleasure to talk to you and connect with you. And like I said, man, you just never know why we had to redo it, but we're here, and hopefully, it does what it needs to do, man. So before we get out of here, give you an opportunity to let everybody know where to find you, your podcast, and any words of encouragement you want to leave us with.
Yeah, absolutely. So our podcast, you can find us at compelledpodcast.com or by searching on your favorite podcast app for Compelled. And our next season comes out September 12th. So very soon, actually, very, very soon. And we are slamming it heavy on editing right now. So we'll be in season from September 12th until I think November 22nd. And then we'll go on break again. So, and just words of encouragement for like all of those that are listening and tuning in. I just want to encourage you guys in y'all's walk that, hey, the Lord is working through your story, no matter how small or insignificant you may think you are. Remember that the Lord has already saved you from a life in hell. That is a crazy story.
Amen, brother. Thank you so much. That's so true. So to the B.A.R listeners, thank you guys for listening to the B.A.R podcast. Make sure you tune in every Tuesday to your favorite podcast. Go to thebarpodcast.com. Also on your favorite podcast catchers, and go to thebargear.com if you want to pick up some bar gear. Until next time, you guys, God bless, and we are out.
If you send money to your loved ones internationally, do it with the Western Union app. Once you've downloaded it, you can send money around the world or back home in just a few taps, so family and friends can pick up cash fast. Download the Western Union app and send money today. Western Union. Fast, easy, reliable. Offered by Western Union Financial Services, Inc., NMLS 906983, or Western Union International Services, LLC, NMLS 906985. Terms apply.